Okay, in this video series, I want to help unpack the top entrepreneurial mistakes that people make when they start a new business. And this is something where, like the principles themselves may not be that big of a phenomenon where you're like, oh, duh, everybody says that. But the problem is people don't share how to mitigate the issues within that principle. Okay. So my name is Brenda Lee and I am founder of Modic Leadership, and I work with executives at C-suite level entrepreneurs and corporate teams to develop their team leadership on a whole different level. And so this comes from well over 2 decades of multiple different business ownership experience on my part in completely different industries, mostly male-dominated industries as well, and then also having corporate experience as my foundation of my career. Okay, so not only that, but couple that with all the experience I have with my clients, and this is some insight that you don't want to miss out on. Okay, and so it's just would not be right of me not to share these secrets of wisdom that me and my clients and life experience just gives that I wish that I knew when I started businesses for the first time. Okay. And so number one in this series, what we're going to talk about is cash flow. And like I said, yeah, of course, everybody talks about cash flow. Cash flow is king, right? But what does that mean? And how do you mitigate it? And how do you protect it? And how do you know you have had enough and that you have enough to get started and that you've got enough runway? Oftentimes you'll hear people talk about what's your runway? What's your runway? Which that means like how long of time frame do you have before you run out of money, right? We know Dave Ramsey always says that he wants 3 to 6 months worth of savings of living expenses in your checking account. And in the reality, when you're an entrepreneur, that number is drastically bigger, right? Because you've got the operations of your business. If you've already are in a place of hiring employees, you've got their income, and now other families are, their life is on the line. They rely on you to make sure that they can feed their families. So the pressure and the amount of responsibility that's there increases significantly, not to mention your own household expenses of what you need. Okay. So you need to get really clear and plan out what expenses specifically you have, how much it's going to cost to keep not just your home operational, but your employees operational and your business operational and afloat. And when you're doing a business, honestly, I would do a minimum of 6 months, if not a year. It takes a while to get businesses up and running. And the reality is you're navigating and learning your business, it just takes time. That's one thing you can't buy on the internet is experience, right? You cannot buy experience. The only way for you to learn exactly what your business needs and how to get through it is by literally going through the trenches and figuring it out yourself, okay? So you want to make certain that you've got enough cash flow, you run the numbers, do not skip this step. This is mistake number one is people are like, I think it'll be about this, and they don't write out a budget, they don't write out the numbers, they don't capture every cost, and then you can get hung out to dry and your business will fold. This is the number one reason why most businesses fail, because they run out of cash flow. They came to the end of the runway and they're not off the ground yet, right? Okay, and so that's critical. And the other thing is there's lots of resources out there. Like I'm in Boise, Idaho area, and I know that like here we've got the Idaho Women's Business Council, I think it is, but they've got resources where you can go in and say, hey, how can I set my financial business that financial aspect of my business up well? Go in and they're free resources. They're there and available to people where you can ask questions. They can help you build a business plan. So here's tip number 2, coupled with getting your financial planning in place correctly, you have to find a good CPA. You must find a good CPA. There are tax write-offs that so many people don't even know exist. Okay. So like, if you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, I believe, don't quote me on this. I'm not an accountant. This is why you need to find a really good one and ask around, right? Just ask people, get on Facebook, get on social media, put out there who's a really good business strategic accountant. You don't want somebody who's just going to push the numbers and bust you through like Quicken would, right? You need someone that's forward thinking, that thinks a year or 2 or 5 in advance, especially if you're purchasing up and gobbling up a lot of capital right now. If your capital is being spent on assets, you need to have a long-term plan there on how to best appreciate those assets. Okay. So that's not something that you can just, go purchase and be like, okay, fine, no big deal. Like there's section 179. You can purchase your car, pay for it all, and each year you can write off that write off that expense fully and completely. So essentially every year you can purchase a new car. Well, and write it off as an expense on your business. Depending on depreciation, depending on how your business is structured, you need to make sure that that's done correctly. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble. That's one thing I always tell everyone and anyone and any business owner and my kids. One person you don't want to mess with is the stinking IRS. You never, ever, ever want to have any issues with the IRS because they have zero mercy. I come from a family of accountants. My brother is a CPA, and there's no freaking mercy. None whatsoever. So you want to make sure that you've got an accountant who's on top of it. I recently had a client, just because you hire this expert doesn't mitigate your responsibility to understand what's going on either. You need to have a general idea of what's happening and ensure and get copies of things. If you've got quarterly taxes that have to be filed, you need to know that they get done. I literally just had a client here recently for like 8 years. There was something along the lines of each year that had to get filed. The accountant told them that they were getting it done. It didn't get done. Well, it doesn't come back on the accountant. It comes back on the business owner. And so now they've got well over $100,000+ in fines that they're paying that they're super frustrated at because their accountant didn't do it. Okay. So get a reputable accountant. And then that leads me into my third point is also have an excellent business attorney. I have one here locally that I absolutely adore and love. I refer people to him all the time. If you're in the Boise area, it's Matthew Taylor's office, and I'm happy to send you that direction. We'll put the link to him in the comments below so you can have access to him as well. And it's just critical. Your business needs to be structured right out of the gate. From the very day one, you need to have your business structured accordingly in the best way possible. And you also need to protect yourself. This goes back to the cash flow. The reason this is under cash flow is because it protects you and potentially mitigates lawsuits or any kind of issues that you might have with your business so that you can retain your cash flow appropriately. It is worth the investment to have a good attorney on standby, have a relationship developed, because in any kind of business, at some point you will have issues. You just will. It's just a reality of it. And so if you've got intellectual property, obviously insurance is a major thing that we could just kind of throw in this whole legal CPA section. You've got to make sure you've got your insurance covered and that everything is taken care of on the legal side and insurance side so that you're covered in case there are any issues. Okay, one of the things that people never shared with me that I just recently learned, and I learned this from one of my clients who operates payment processing, is how critically important it is to keep your business debt separate from your personal debt. And this means that when you start your business, you set up a business plan. Banks will require you set up a business plan. You go to the bank and you get a loan. If your cash flow is an issue, you get a loan through the banks. They've got small business loans where the interest rates generally might be a little bit more, but the terms are a lot more feasible and reasonable as a new business to manage. But you keep that completely separate from your personal debt. The mistake that often people do is that they will run back and forth expenses to and from, or debt to and from personal and business. And those lines get crossed and then it gets to be a mess. And then not only does it make a financial mess as you're doing accounting and all that kind of crap, you now have exposed yourself on a personal side to potential lawsuit and for legal issues. Okay. And so if the business fails and you've got all this personal debt, you can't file bankruptcy on a business, and now you're still stuck with this debt that was shifted over onto your personal side instead of maintaining and keeping it separate in your business, okay? And the other thing is when you get loans, get the right loans. And like I said, when you go to these like Idaho Women's Business Network, you can have access to loans that, or they may have grants even. You just never know. In fact, somebody shared with me, I think Google, I probably shouldn't even say this, but I'm going to say it in case you can research and find it, that Google Ads, depending on your business, I think for nonprofits, you can get up to $100,000 a year in free Google Ads. So when you've got a nonprofit, and this is the importance of structuring a business correctly, even though you may have a business, but you also do a nonprofit, that's another way to mitigate and shield some expenses to some extent, while also offering assistance in a nonprofit arena where people need help. So it's a win-win in that regard, both for your business and for a cause that you are that you adore, that you're passionate about. Okay, so these are some things that I wish that I would have known when I started a business that I've learned not only through my clients but my experience that I wanted to pass on to you, because again, people talk about cash flow as king, but really, what does that mean? And so hopefully I've given you the list of things today where you can get really clear and defined on what actionable steps you can take to protect that cash flow and keep you above water financially as you grow your business and pour your heart and soul into this new baby that you started. All right, so if you want more tidbits, make sure you subscribe to our channel, click the bell to get notified when new videos come out, and like this video. Thank you.